You're not dreaming. This is episode 3 of the Ghouligans. I am Mr. Lobo, your humble horror host. I've been kindly asked by the producers of the Ghouligans to do an audio commentary. I had no idea that I would be speaking for 3 hours over the course of 6 episodes. In hindsight, I think that it was a bad idea. As you can see, this intro is different every time. The last shot of the open is always a surprise. Ghouligans Island, that's a reference to Gilligan's Island, of course, which was a Sherwood Schwartz television show starring Bob Denver. A bunch of castaways get stuck on an island. Wackiness ensues. And this episode is referencing Gilligan's Island, of course. Again, I think I used up most of my energy with the first 2 episodes. Definitely on the first episode, I think I pretty much used up everything I had to say about the Ghouligans, almost, in that first half an hour. But my wife and I, we have a magazine and a blog called Horror Hosts and Creature Features. Dixie is the editor. I'm the publisher. We did an article about the Ghouligans. Perhaps I'll read it to you later if I completely run out of things to say. But, it would be great to have Dixie with me here now to talk about the Ghouligans, since that might have been the reason they asked me to do the commentary, was because of the article that we had written. I guess I had written for our magazine, but Dixie does not talk. She does play characters on Cinema Insomnia, but characters that do not talk. If we had her here talking and the talking was being recorded, she would throw up. So we don't want that to happen. So Mr. Lobo is here talking by himself. Like I said, it might have been nice to have someone else in this room with me to bounce off of. But, it's an enjoyable show. I really appreciate what these guys are trying to do. They're dressed as kind of different characterizations of... he's got the Gilligan hat, or the typical sailor hat. You've got sort of Popeye, the sailor with the corncob pipe and the captain's hat, and you've got the Gordon's fisherman type sailor. And now they have struck land, it looks like. And here you have the typical 80s teenagers, specifically from Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Teen Wolf. He's got the boardwalk culture going on there with the blinds, Venetian blind sunglasses, and the "What are you farting at, ass mouth" t-shirt. I like that effect with the boat chroma keyed, or I don't know if it's chroma keyed, but cheesily composited fake boat on the beach there.
It looks like a great surf spot. I mean, that erupting volcano over there will make some great waves.
This is another time-honored trope of B movies, which are the white natives, also the sexy savage girls.
Oh, lady natives. Wolfgang like you. Hey, dogface. Speak Americanese? We are the Ghouligans. Donde está el...
This was common in pulp magazines and comic books and drive-in movies, where you have a bunch of attractive modern women in store-bought savage costumes with spears.
Oh, monster stew, that stuff's delicious, man. I'm starving.
Either that or they want
us to help repopulate this island.
I know what that means. Okay, ladies, we'll be your love slaves. Do with us what you will. But please, be gentle. Whoa! Ow!
This must have been a quite a day for them. A bright sunny day in head-to-toe monster costumes. There is Wolfgang as George Michael there, and then this is some more. This is like a sort of like a '60s go-go film here. Looks kind of like a Scopatone with the Goulic Gals or the Gurla Ghouls, the girly Goulic Gals. Cute shorts. And now we are in yet another genre, pop culture genre from south of the border. Very famous, but if you possibly have never seen a Mexican wrestling movie, which might be possible, it's a very robust genre. There are hundreds of movies with Mexican wrestlers, and in Mexico they have masked wrestling or luchadors. They would fight in the ring wearing these colorful masks and being these over-the-top characters. And the mask would not come off. In fact, it would be disgrace to take the mask off. And usually, if they would have matches to where the loser would have to remove their mask. El Santo was a national treasure, national hero. He was so popular that there was a whole series of movies with El Santo as the hero, and he did not take off his mask. He remained masked throughout the whole movie. When he's taking a shower, when he's with his girlfriend in a nice candlelit dinner, when he's driving his car, El Santo is always wearing his mask in these films. And they did a lot of crossovers with genres where he is, it's El Santo versus vampire women, El Santo versus Aztec mummies, El Santo versus moon men. It became kind of like a male fantasy, like James Bond, where you got this super crime fighter, usually with gadgets, and over-the-top villains. And El Santo was so popular, then a lot of other wrestlers, like Blue Demon and Mil Mascaras, ended up throwing their masks into the ring of action films. And so you have a whole, again, a whole robust genre of science fiction films with masked heroes that are a little bit sci-fi, a little bit horror, a little bit superhero, a little bit sports. Sometimes there'd be entire wrestling matches just in the middle of a movie. So again, go to your local public library and investigate Mexican wrestling films. You won't be disappointed.
No, not my Alonza, my love. How can I destroy her beauty? Like this!
I like the fact that they have entirely different Frankenstein, Dracula, and Mummy for this spoof within a spoof, parody of a movie inside of a parody of a TV show.
Well done, my friends. You have proven to be worthy
Late 60s, early 70s, you can sort of see that influence with the
Perhaps we will meet again. Goodbye.
Frankenstein with the funky hairdo.
Someday we will stop Diablo, and the world will be free of evil. Next time, my friend. Next time.
Nicely done. And here are the Gula Gals again. He's doing these sort of bump outs. This would be typical with the Beatles and the Monkees, where they would do sort of colorful prancing to sort of transition between scenes. This kind of plays like a Jackass. This is some more MTV kind of spoofing. Because this is hard for me to imagine Boris being this mean. But apparently, Sick Boy and Ulcer were two characters. They did a public access show where they did pranks, where Peter and Michael would do pranks on Sean. And so this is also referencing their earlier work, as well as being a spoof of reality TV and Jackass. Great gags.
One step at a time, buddy.
It's interesting to see like imaginative, colorful characters imitating reality TV. This here is a spoof of MTV's spots with comedian Dennis Leary. For those of you who don't know, Dennis Leary was a popular comedian once upon a time. Fast-talking, angry, had several comedy albums, TV specials, and I don't know what Dennis Leary is doing now. He might be washing cars.
One thing I can't stand, it's well-done lobster surf report time. It disgusts me. While on the topic, what's with all the hot butter? Look, I know how tasty our crustaceous anthropodic friends are, but for Cthulhu's sake, lay off the butter. It's bad for you. Sure, it's delicious, but when you get to the pearly gates from a heart attack, do you really want to have to explain to everybody how you got there? I like butter. Come on!
That's a very good impression of Dennis Leary.
And I'm crawling on shore. I'm coming.
It's just too bad no one cares who Dennis Leary is.
And there ain't no amount of melted butter in the world that's gonna save you.
Another bump card. And now we're back in our B-movie scenario. I guess this could have happened on Gilligan's Island with the cute, sexy female natives, Amazon natives, capturing the this is sort of a male fantasy. The boys getting captured by, getting dominated by attractive women.
See him live front row at the garden. It's gonna be bananas.
And again, that's like he's like Spicoli from Fast Times, which was an '80s comedy. Now this is Stephanie Finocchio, I believe her name is. She was was Trinity in the WWE, so a little guest appearance there of a lady wrestler.
What are you firing at, ass mouth? You rip my shirt. I want to rip your shirt at me.
You are all trespassers. This island belonged to our great god Vulcan.
This kind of reminds me of the Adrienne Barbeau movie. I think it's Jungle Women in the Amazon Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death, I think is the name of that film. Someone find that out for me and send me an email. But this is again a time-honored B-movie genre of attractive actresses betraying savage women.
Problem solved. There's 6 of us, Boyd. How do we decide which 3 are sacrificed?
Looks like these guys have a hot day with the volcano. Vacation's over, Griswolds.
Vacation's over, Griswolds. That's a reference to the film Vacation.
What's your problem, bud? Let's do this
Chevy
right.
Chase.
Loser jumps into the volcano.
Fine, we'll take you at anything. Basketball, tennis, swimming, long-distance relationships.
I like that long-distance relationships is one of the challenges.
You name it. You name it.
Sacrifice of 3 will be settled with oldest island custom.
I really feel bad for the guy in the gorilla suit. I felt bad for the monsters in the monster suits, but being in a gorilla suit on a sunny day is no day at the beach. Although that might have been a day at the beach. Now this is becoming like an 80s movie, like Ski School or Ski Patrol. It's actually reminding me a lot of Better Off Dead, where you have John Cusack in a skiing competition, where it's the cool kids versus the nerds.
We'll see you in hell.
I'll let you decide who are the cool kids and who are the nerds. But if this seems confusing to you, you may need to brush up on your 80s movies. I like the fact that there's snow on this island. Again, another 90-degree genre turn. You know, this is driven by comedy. The comedy is the driving force. Not that needs to be said, but you know, there isn't a lot of monster movie or horror movie tropes happening in this episode. This is all various genres being parodied. Comedy genres being parodied. I like the green screen, blue screen effect. Again, this is something that seems very sketch comedy, but Croft Super Show. I like the rockets on the wrists, very Inspector Gadget. Turning the sign, that's kind of like a Warner Brothers cartoon gimmick. Love that volcano. You wouldn't see that in a 70s kid show. Now we're back with our sexy natives.
You have made Vulcan happy. He will be merciful to us. You have proven to be macho. We would like to be modern women. Will you show us how?
Wait a second. 1 minute?
Yeah.
This is gonna be great.
Yeah.
We can take them back to our castle.
Yeah.
They can clean the coffins. Refill the.
This is something that the Three Stooges would think
Maybe they could even cook us
was a
food.
good idea.
Our frozen TV dinner brains just ain't the same as the real thing.
Or perhaps Abbott and Costello. I think they did do. I think they both did this scenario where they had a jungle brides.
All right, native hotties. We've decided to take you back to the real world. But first, a few conditions.
We will go with you to the new world.
All right.
I love this gorilla.
Well, all right. The boat leaves in an hour. Man, I am good.
By the way, where did all the men go on this island anyway?
Skiing?
Here's the bump card again. They've definitely gotten their use out of that. Another commercial parody. Now, this reminds me of like a Levi's 501s ad, but I'm told this was a Wrangler ad from the 90s with a football player that Mr. Lobo has never heard of. Mr. Lobo is surprisingly, Mr. Lobo is not a sports fan. Ulcer, that you'll see that again and again. That's kind of like the reoccurring corporate entity.
It took me over 100 years, but I'm finally finished with my manuscript.
Rotten Hell Venkman is a reference to Ghostbusters, but I'm not sure if that is a reference to that or Carrie or any sort of defaced tombstone.
Hang around graveyards looking for monsters in their manuscripts?
Zombies are hot right now. Anything zombies, and we'll kill them at the box office.
Okay, well, my story has to deal with a lonely, slow-moving zombie who's really depressed and looking for love.
Yeah. No problem. Look, we'll do it your way, okay? But you're gonna have to sign this contract right here, okay? Just put your name right there. You will become.
I kind of feel this story is very symbolic of their struggle. You know, they're trying to do something very pure and creative, and you know, the industry is just rotten to the core, and you know, if they can't use you and exploit you, they marginalize you and ignore you. And this cartoon or this caricature of a Hollywood executive kind of represents the worst aspects of that. This is another movie within a movie. these guys are going to come across a tombstone, and they recite this sort of, a lot of 80s and 70s and 80s movies have like nursery rhyme kind of like Freddy Krueger and stuff like that. They have these sort of sing-songy nursery rhymes in the horror films. And this one is like, void, void, return from the dead, with or without your rotten head, or something like that. And this is the same incantation that they used in the Ghouligans Super Show to raise void. But again, this is a movie within a sketch within a TV show. A lot of different references here to different kinds of movies. That guy almost looks like he's from like a 90s horror movie.
You're playing the wrong movie.
And playing Void in the sketch, I believe, is the makeup artist Shane McGowan, who works on the show.
Hey, boy, baby. Oh, you're looking good. How's that movie? How we cleaned up this weekend.
Yeah, I'm real happy for you, man. Hey, where's that check you promised me, huh?
Check? Oh, the check. All them zeros I told you about, they're all there. Oh, one more thing for you. No residuals. Huh?
That sucked. There was nothing like the book.
Hey, nice boy costume. It's not even accurate.
That's particularly biting for me because I've kind of been at conventions where people came up to me and said that I was cosplaying Mr. Lobo. So it just shows you how fickle fans can be. This is Frankenstein with 3 brides. So again, a little quick and cute blackout skit. Another prank, sort of like the Slacker TV stuff.
Okay, it's early in the morning, and Void is about to leave for work. He's taking a shave, but what he doesn't realize
Some jackass stuff. Again, it's hard to imagine the Boris that we know from the Ghouligans being this mean, but for the purposes of this skit and parodying this jackass stuff, we just kind of go with it. It's a really great gag. Again, another great visual gag. I'm not gonna tell you how they did it, but if you watch it, you'll be able to tell pretty much how they did it. But simple but effective, practical special effect, and very funny. Always makes me laugh every time. The Ghouligans. There they are. What a great look.
I got 3 words for you. Humans are stupid.
We're coming back to another reference to the MTV Dennis Leary spots.
Underwater. A more realistic version of your theme park would be a bunch of humans drowning, okay? And while we're talking about it, killer whales. Humans are so stupid, they swim around with these things all day and wonder why their legs are being chopped off in the middle of the big red whale adventure show. They're called killer whales. Not totally cool with someone doing a handstand on their face, whales. If you free Willy, Willy will kill you. Case closed.
This is amazing to me that they're doing this stuff out on a location. It looks like it's very cold where there are, full makeup on. You're having to be funny with your face covered in ping pong balls and garbage.
During the big red stupid human adventure show, okay? I think you hear me tapping, and I'm coming through the class.
There's a lot of references piled on top of each other. You got a character that's it's a creature from the Black Lagoon from the 50s as a beach bum in the 60s as a comedian from the 90s. So you've got a lot happening in that sketch. And back with our story, we have the boys still being dominated by the women only in their own castle environment.
Yep. Hey, Wolfgang.
Man, Mary Laugh sure
Now, I'm not
does.
hearing the canned laughter.
She's got me on a really short leash.
Floors are all clean. I'm gonna go upstairs and clean the lab, but I need a break. I've been working all day.
Yeah, this would have been a good place to have the canned laughter return, but maybe they felt it was too confusing after being away for most of the episode on the island. But if that device of the laughter only being in the castle is to work going forward, I think they have to be consistent with it, and I think they're going to have to acknowledge it. But still, a great show, a funny show. Void is still there, being used as a footrest. These guys from Fast Times and Teen Wolf, a lot of fun. Thank you for letting Mr. Lobo suck all the magic out of another episode of this fine program. I'd like to invite you to join me for episode 4. I'm going to drink some coffee and hopefully get some energy back to do a better job for you. This is a marathon. I'm going to stay with it. I hope you stay with it too. I'll see you for episode 4 of the Ghouligans coming up next.